Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Rent Prep for Landlords. This is episode number 273, and I'm going to be talking to you about some things I've been learning from listing a rental property for sale and a few little tips and tricks I've learned from my realtor and just kind of filling you guys in on that experience and how that's going as the first time that I'm selling a property. So excited to talk to you about that and give you some of the latest updates. All right, let's get to that right after this.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
So if you're in the Facebook group, maybe you already saw the post that I put up last week. It was kind of an event post. You know those sayings that we have. Very common one is things come in threes, right? So I was kind of having that type of week where you're just waiting for that third thing to kind of pop in that was going to kind of ruin your week. So last week, I paid to have a contractor come out to fix a piece of flashing that had come off the house, also repointing some of the brickwork in the garage area of the rental property. Then I ended up having a massive bee infestation and had a exterminator come out to take care of it. Kind of was doing the pros, cons of doing it myself kind of thing. I'll say, looking back, I'm glad I got an exterminator to come out. It was $125 plus tax, not that big of a deal. But I actually was stung by some sort of bee or insect when I was a kid, and it got hives so bad that they almost mercy flighted me to a hospital. So looking back, I was like, you know what? Sometimes it's not worth saving $125. So they ended up coming out and saying that there was almost a soccer ball size infestation behind the siding based on how many bees were coming in and out, they said. So got that taken care of. And then ended up having a few other things pop up. And was on the way to the rental property, got a flat tire on the way, got a huge screw, kind of like with a bolt head on it, into my tire. So that was cool. I got home, found out my sewer line is backed up and potentially might need to get the sewer line replaced at my house. So that was pretty awesome, and just had this really just incredible week of just build up of being really excited to list the property and go through this experience, but then just having all these last minute kind of things I was buttoning up or just issues I wasn't planning on, whether it be the sewer line or the bee infestation. But we're getting there, which is nice. But from going through this process, learned a few things from my realtor, kind of some things that we kind of did as far as listing the property. The first one I want to talk about is kind of just market conditions. So for whatever reason, the block that I'm selling on, 3 other properties went up for sale at the same time. And he was just kind of letting me know from his experience. He's like, I know it seems kind of counterintuitive to wait on listing their property, but he's like, it's not going to do us any favors listing while these other houses are listed down the street. It's kind of a supply and demand thing if somebody's looking at a specific street that they wanted to buy on. So we ended up waiting a couple weeks before we listed, and sure enough, we went from 4 properties down to 2. So we kind of got the supply on the street down a little bit. One of the other things he kind of mentioned is, and I thought this was pretty interesting, when you're taking photos of the property, he said you don't always want crystal clear photos. He was saying that if you got a room that's a little bit, maybe there's a little bit of wear and tear in the room, and this would apply too if you're, listing for rentals and you're trying to fill up your rentals. He's like, if it's not 100% mint, he's like, I'll actually go with an iPhone photo and have it just at a medium to low resolution, because it gives you the idea of what the property looks like, but people can't sit there and nitpick every little thing by zooming in because you have this super high definition, high res photo, which I thought was pretty interesting. That I've never heard that before. So that might be a kind of a takeaway that you can use if you think that maybe, you got a little bit of wear and tear on an apartment that you're still listing anyways. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So leading up to all this, kind of gotten to that point where I was just kind of waiting for if something will go wrong or if something's going to happen, it will go wrong this weekend. We had the open house on Sunday from 1 to 3, and it just poured and poured like crazy for those 2 days on Saturday and Sunday. But that was fine. The house is in good condition. I ended up having about 15 to 20 different buyer groups come out, some couples, some single people, looking at the house. We had 2 of them kind of come back, later during the open house, with the realtor and with a parent, and then 2 private showings on Monday. one confirmed real estate agent who said that their client is going to be putting an offer in this week, and we've capped it where we want the offers to come in by Friday. So we're letting the realtors know that if you want to put in an offer, you got to have it in by Friday to be considered. And it's exciting. As I'm recording this is Tuesday, August 20th. Never sold the property before. Looking to see how this goes, but excited about the possibility that we could have a good offer in by Friday. And it sounds like it'd probably be more than one, but time will tell. And of course, people can say they're going to put in an offer, and there could be other people showing a lot of interest, but you don't know what kind of timelines other people are on. But it's a really exciting moment, to be honest. It's interesting being kind of involved in real estate to the level that I am, where you got a few properties, you bought a couple properties, you got 2 units that you're renting out, and kind of going through a process that I haven't gone through before in selling. I will say that I'm glad that I am using a real estate agent in my particular case, because I'm pretty green on this. So he's definitely helping out, and I know we'll probably be able to navigate a lot of the conversations and different challenges of selling a property a lot easier than I would. Going with a friend who did a great job on helping us find our house that we live in, so he's given us a good rate too. So he's given us the 2%. And I will mention that because obviously 3% is a typical real estate agent fee, and he's willing to do it for 2% because we're friends. His wife actually was in our wedding party. But one of the interesting books that I read recently, and maybe I brought it up on the podcast before, was I Will Teach You How to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, I believe his name is. And one of the things he talks about is that he wants to teach you how to negotiate. And he said that one of the issues that he sees with a lot of people is they negotiate the things that don't matter. So you go to a flea market and you try to get a used item from $8 to $5 or something like that. And he goes, that stuff doesn't matter in the course of your life. It doesn't really save you anything. But he said when it comes to large purchases, so you're purchasing a vehicle, you're getting a house, you're getting financing on a house, those are the things where negotiating really matters. So I thought about that actually because I was planning on using this realtor, but I wasn't sure if he was open to a reduced rate. I didn't actually say anything, and I kind of let him bring it up. And he was the one that brought up 2%, which was great because that's exactly what I was going to ask for. But it was great letting him bring it up so I didn't have to kind of, be the cheapskate that's like, hey, by the way, would you mind doing this for 33% less than you normally would make? But it's a good property. It shouldn't hopefully require too much work on his end with multiple showings and whatnot. But when you look at it, if this property sells for $250,000, that 1% on the real estate agent's fee is $2,500. And if you're in a situation where you're dealing with a realtor and you have that ability to just essentially just by saying something, saying, hey, would you be willing to go to 2% or 2.5%? Even if it's 2.5%, you just put, $1,250 in your pocket just from a conversation. And the thing that's interesting about that is, you maybe you work a full-time job and who knows what, I don't know what your salary is or anything like that, but you can think about it in terms of how many hours do you have to work a week post-tax to make $1,250. Granted, I'll be taxed on that money anyway, so maybe I should say pre-tax. But you might end up working 40 hours or maybe 60 hours just to make that money. And it's just a quick conversation you can have with a realtor. But the book that I was reading from Ramit said that people, especially Westerners, feel like it's taboo or they don't want to feel like they're cheap or that they're a cheapskate kind of thing. So they don't bother when it comes to buying a car or getting financing on your house or your mortgage to really negotiate and try to get a better deal. So I kept that in mind. Luckily, I didn't really have to do any negotiating because my friend made it easy and I was happy with the 2%. But that's something that I'm kind of keeping in mind as I'm going through this process. I don't know how much I shared on previous episodes, but part of the reason I'm selling it is we got another kid coming along. And what I'm looking to do actually is use those funds to kind of be able to redistribute them more into college savings plans. And long-term real estate, or not real estate, but long-term investing in just retirement accounts, which I know is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of the guests in this podcast. But one of the things I'm realizing is that for me, the time and freedom and lack of liability of the property is very crucial right now. I can see myself getting back into real estate and owning a rental property or two, or maybe a bunch of rental properties in the future. But right now I'm trying to just simplify as much as I can and keep things simple. So selling the property, then going in the next year, having 2 kids, 2 young kids, there'll be 2 and, less than 1, and being able to really have my life simplified to the point that I don't have to worry about anything else except what's underneath our roof and the family inside of it, is why I am doing that. It kind of gives me some runway for several years too, to be able to try some different endeavors and things of that nature as well. So I'm excited to see what kind of offers come in. First time doing this. Very, very excited to hear what happens. Trying not to get my hopes up too much in case we don't get any offers, but it is sounding good so far. But looking back, it's interesting because, when you buy rental, especially with the buy and hold strategy that I've had with this rental for over 10 years, you're never really thinking about this day, right? You're just thinking about, well, what's the mortgage? What's the cash flow situation? How much rent can I get from it? How much do I think it's going to cost in repairs per year? What are the vacancy rates going to be? That kind of stuff that you're kind of thinking about with buy and hold. But I didn't buy it thinking like, oh, I'm going to sell this in like 10 years when, I'm going to end up having 2 kids and I want to simplify my life. Like couldn't see around the bend that far. But it is really interesting to see the appreciation of the property now, where this property was purchased at $114,500, and now we're listing it up around $269,000 currently on the MLS and on Zillow and other platforms. So it's really cool to see the appreciation kind of finally coming to fruition, besides just like an increased rent that has happened over the years, and kind of getting the payoff of that. I know a lot of people listening are like, don't sell. Like, you got a great property, it's cash flow and all that stuff. But I think it's important to kind of like listen to yourself, listen to what you got going on, what you think's right for your situation, and make sure you're not just, going down the same rabbit holes just because it's kind of your motive, or maybe your just go-to, or just your routine or habit. And I realized that I was getting stressed out because I got a lot of stuff going on, obviously with a young family, and being a landlord at this particular point in time was not one of them I wanted to continue to do. So after a lot of conversation and thought, decided to sell the property and really kind of just reassess what we're trying to do and simplify things. So I think that's important. I think sometimes we get caught up in, there's only one way to do something, or, I'm a landlord, or I'm going to, get 25 rental properties and live on that. And then all of a sudden you're at like 15, and for some reason things just feel miserable and it's not right for you. Like, pivot, like figure out something else that you can do. Not enough people, myself included, kind of consider all your options and realize like, hey, like I don't have to do this. This is just a choice that I made when I purchased this property. This is not a prison sentence, as it felt sometimes, when you get a little bit busy or you get tough tenants or something like that. But you always have a choice. You always have a decision that you can make. You can always alter the trajectory of what you're trying to do and move in a new direction. So I'm looking forward to sharing some more details with you guys next week on how that's going. I'll keep you in the loop. Hopefully you got some good news. I could definitely use it after hearing that I might have to change out the sewer line at my primary residence. That's not going to be a cheap one, but I will say it is worth always getting a second quote. I know I brought this up before. I read the book Principles by Ray Dalio, really smart guy, and he said that one of the things that he lives by is he always triangulates important decisions. So what he means is he always gets 3 point of views on really important decisions. So what he said is he got a cancer diagnosis, and the doctor pretty much said you have less than 6 months to live. Talked to another doctor, and this doctor said, you know what, like if we do this, pretty invasive surgery, and there's a chance that, you could live a full life. And this other doctor said, this isn't a big deal at all. You'll be fine. And basically, we just got to do some routine maintenance on you and you'll be fine. So he went with that third doctor and he was fine. And here he's saying, he's like, I can afford the best medical treatment in the world. And I had one doctor saying I was going to die and another one saying, no, you're going to be fine. Like, we just got to do some routine maintenance every 6 months. And when I read that, I was like, man, that's crazy when you think about that, because if you don't know, I believe he's one of the 100 richest people in the world. He owns the largest hedge fund company in the United States. And here's somebody who is getting bad advice from top of their professionals. And it made me think about myself, average Joe, who's, getting a quote on a project, and you're just kind of, well, I guess that's, what the going rate is for it. And an example of that is I had a company come out to snake our sewer line, and they told us, you know what, this isn't going to work. You probably need to replace the sewer line, which is, going to cost $5,000, probably more. Going to have to rip up the driveway, potentially the garage floor, like just an absolute mess. So I was like, you know what, I'll stick with what that Ray guy said, and I will try to triangulate this decision. So got another contractor on the phone, explained the situation, and he goes, look, the guys you're dealing with, they're fine. I've dealt with them before. They're not bad, but this is not what they focus on. He goes, they do not do sewer line replacements and all that. And he said, what I've found is I've been able to get the tree. I have tree roots that are growing through the sewer line. He's like, through using different techniques and different tips on the actual snake device, he said that a lot of times you can get through these sewer lines. And he's like, I've had customers that I've been able to just maintain it for them for another 6-8 years. And then they replaced it 8 years later. So he goes, before you go into like replacing it completely, he goes, let us take a look and see if we can't get this thing cleared out for you by trying some different tactics that maybe they didn't try. So I will follow up with you guys on that as well, because that right there, you're talking $175 to have them come out and do this. And for me, it's worth it, because if it means I don't have to spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $15,000 if you're talking about putting in a new driveway too, because you don't want the stone driveway in, it's worth getting that second opinion, and maybe I'll even get a third one too. But these are all things I'm just kind of learning as I'm going, learning by doing. One of the creeds or mottos, I should say, that I live by is I always want to be able to look back at myself every 3 to 5 years and kind of chuckle to myself about how either maybe immature or inexperienced or silly that person was. And I guess where this kind of comes from for me is when I was using Facebook more a few years ago, they'd always have these like memories that would pop up, and it would be like, you posted this 5 years ago. And whenever those would pop up, it'd always be like something cringy to me. I'd be like, like what an attention craved individual, or like I would never post that now, or why would I write that, and for a little bit, I'd kind of just get like that cringy feeling of looking at my past from like 5 years ago. But one of the things I realized thinking about that is that's good. It's showing personal growth. Not being hard on myself, just being like, oh, I'm like a different person than I was 5 years ago. And that's something that I always kind of go back to when I'm kind of working through something and realizing like just this particular case, maybe before I would have just rushed into like, all right, fine, we got to get it replaced. This stinks. Let's do it. And now I'm trying to realize like, all right, let's get a few more opinions on this. Let's take our time. I know that it's literally a crappy situation when your sewer line is backing up, but let's get a few perspectives on this. Let's get more data. Let's get more information, and then see what we can do. And taking my time and not rushing into things and trying to figure those things out. And hopefully in another 5 years too, I'll look at, some of the stuff that I'm doing right now and just be like, oh, Eric, you were a little wet behind the ears. You're, a little silly in kind of some of the stuff you're doing, or the thought process you had on things. But that's all part of the personal growth and figuring things out. And I think that applies to anybody, especially if you're in real estate and you're trying to grow a portfolio or trying to build and carve out your little niche of the world for yourself. You got to make sure that you're, being kind to yourself, but at the same time, being able to reflect on things and grow as a person and as an individual, and, always get better every day, and just learn from your past and past mistakes and figure it out as you go. So that's enough of my rambling this week. But I just wanted to kind of give you guys some updates on what's going on personally. And I'll fill you guys in too as we go on into the next week. But that's it for this episode. And I look forward to catching up with you guys next week. Have a great week and take care.